I never thought the man I spent 12 years loving would abandon me in another state with a dead phone, one suitcase, and less than $40 in my wallet. But that's exactly what happened. And somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was discovering that my husband hadn't just left me behind. He had planned it. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 38 years old, from Denver, Colorado, and I work as a senior accountant for a regional healthcare company. For most of my life, I believed that if you were loyal to your family, eventually that loyalty would come back to you. I was wrong. I grew up as the invisible child. My older brother Jason was the golden child. Everything revolved around him. If Jason got a B, my parents celebrated. If I got straight A's, they asked why one score wasn't higher. When Jason crashed my father's truck at 17, my parents blamed the weather. When I accidentally broke a lamp at 13, I was grounded for a month. I spent my childhood trying to earn love that was freely given to someone else. I became responsible, independent. I learned not to ask for much. By 26, I had built a stable life. I had a good job, my own apartment, a small circle of friends. And then I met Ryan Mitchell. He was charming, funny, confident, and unlike anyone I'd dated before, he made me feel seen. For someone who spent her entire childhood feeling overlooked, that feeling was addictive. When he proposed 3 years later, I said yes without hesitation. My parents loved him. Actually, they loved him more than they loved me. Ryan and Jason became friends almost immediately. The three of them would joke together while I sat quietly beside them. It should have bothered me, but I convinced myself that it was a good thing. I thought it meant my family was finally accepting me. Looking back, I ignored dozens of warning signs. Ryan always controlled the finances. He always had an excuse when money disappeared. He constantly criticized me in subtle ways. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, just enough to slowly erode my confidence. He'd say things like, "You're lucky I handle the investments," or, "You worry too much. That's why I make the big decisions." I told myself every marriage had flaws. I told myself love required compromise. Then my grandmother died. She was the only person in my family who ever made me feel truly loved. Grandma Helen never treated me differently than Jason. She remembered birthdays. She attended school events. She called just to ask how I was doing. When she passed away, I was devastated. What happened afterward changed everything. A few weeks after the funeral, her attorney contacted me. Apparently, Grandma had updated her will several years earlier. She left me a substantial inheritance. Not millions, but enough to completely change my life. About $700,000. I was stunned. Then I learned something even more shocking. She had intentionally left very little to my parents and Jason. The attorney explained why. Grandma believed they had spent decades favoring Jason while neglecting me. She wanted to correct that imbalance. For the first time in my life, someone had acknowledged what I'd experienced. I cried in the attorney's office. Not because of the money, because someone finally saw the truth. My parents were furious. Jason was furious. Ryan pretended to support me, at first. Then things started changing. Ryan became obsessed with the inheritance. Every conversation somehow returned to the money. He wanted bigger investments, riskier investments, business opportunities, vacation properties. When I hesitated, he became irritated. One night he said something that stuck with me. That money belongs to both of us. Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable. Not our future. Not our goals. Just the money. I started noticing other things too. Accretive phone calls, late nights, frequent business trips, emotional distance. But after 12 years together, I trusted him. At least I wanted to. Then came our anniversary trip. 12 years of marriage. Ryan suggested we celebrate in California. A week along the coast. He booked everything himself. Flights, hotels, rental car, restaurants. He seemed unusually enthusiastic. I thought maybe we were finally reconnecting. For the first few days, everything felt normal. We visited wineries, walked along the beach, took pictures together. Then on the fourth day, everything exploded. We were staying in a hotel near Santa Barbara. Ryan said he needed to meet an old college friend for lunch. He left around noon. Hours passed, no call, no text, nothing. Around 6 o'clock, I finally received a message. 3 sentences, that's all. Don't try to contact me. I've fallen in love with someone else. It's over. I remember staring at my phone, reading it again and again, unable to process what I was seeing. I called him immediately. Straight to voicemail, Agen voicemail. Then I discovered he had canceled the credit card he managed, the hotel reservation, the rental car, everything. I was stranded, over 1,000 miles from home, alone. My hands were shaking. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed and cried harder than I had cried in years. Not because he left, because I finally understood how little I meant to him. The next morning, things got worse. A woman contacted me through social media. She introduced herself as Melissa Ryan's girlfriend. Not new girlfriend. For almost 2 years. While I was planning anniversaries and holidays and family dinners, my husband had been living a second life. Melissa didn't know he was married when they met. She eventually learned the truth. Ryan promised her he was getting divorced. Apparently, my inheritance accelerated his plans. He told her we'd separate after he secured access to the money. My stomach dropped. Access to the money. That was the plan, the entire time. I felt sick, humiliated. Used, I borrowed money from a friend to get home. The flight back to Denver was one of the longest days of my life. When I arrived, another betrayal was waiting. My parents already knew. Jason knew. Everyone knew. Ryan had been discussing the divorce for months. With them. Behind my back. My mother actually said something I'll never forget. Maybe if you'd been a better wife, this wouldn't have happened. I stared at her, completely speechless. My husband abandoned me, cheated on me, used me for money, and somehow I was still the villain. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. Not emotionally. Emotionally, I had already shattered. What broke was my need for their approval. I was done. I hired an attorney, filed for divorce, cut contact with my parents, cut contact with Jason, changed my number, started therapy, and slowly rebuilt my life. The first year was brutal. Some days I barely got out of bed. Some days I questioned every decision I'd ever made. But healing happened one small step at a time. I focused on work, I exercised, I traveled. I learned who I was without constantly chasing acceptance. For the first time in my life, I built boundaries. Real boundaries. The inheritance helped. I invested carefully, bought a modest home, expanded my professional certifications. Eventually, I started my own accounting and financial consulting firm. It wasn't easy, but it grew year after year, slowly, steadily. Honestly, 5 years passed. Then karma started arriving, not dramatic movie karma, real life karma, the kind that develops quietly over time. I learned through mutual acquaintances that Ryan's relationship with Melissa had collapsed. Apparently, he cheated on her too, several times. Shocking. I know. The man who betrayed his wife turned out to be dishonest. Who could have predicted that? His finances were also a disaster. The risky investments he once pushed me toward had failed spectacularly. He accumulated debt, lost jobs, burned professional relationships. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. Then one afternoon, I received an unexpected voicemail. My father, the first contact in years. His voice sounded older, weaker. He asked me to call back. I didn't. A week later, my mother called, then Jason. Then more messages followed. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I listened, and suddenly everything made sense. Jason was in serious financial trouble. Over the years, my parents had continued rescuing him from every mistake, failed businesses, credit card debt, bad investments, legal problems. They drained their retirement savings helping him. Then my father suffered health issues. Medical expenses piled up. The family finances collapsed. The golden child they spent decades protecting couldn't save them. Now they needed help. My help. The daughter they ignored. The daughter they blamed. The daughter they abandoned emotionally for most of her life. For weeks I struggled with what to do. Part of me wanted revenge. Part of me wanted to ignore them forever. Part of me still carried the wounded child desperate for love. Eventually, I agreed to meet them. One meeting, at a coffee shop, neutral ground. When they walked in, they looked different, smaller somehow, not physically. Emotionally, life had humbled them. My mother started crying almost immediately. My father apologized. Jason apologized. Real apologies, not excuses. Not explanations, apologies. They admitted things I never expected to hear. The favoritism, the neglect, the unfair treatment, everything. For years, I imagined hearing those words. Now that they were finally spoken, I felt strangely empty. Validation doesn't erase damage, it only confirms it existed. Then they asked for financial help. There it was, the real reason. I listened quietly. When they finished, I told them something simple. I forgive you, but I'm not responsible for fixing your choices. Silence. My mother cried harder. Jason stared at the table. My father nodded slowly. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't angry. I simply refused to sacrifice myself again. That chapter of my life was over. A few months later, another surprise arrived. Ryan called. I almost laughed when I heard his voice. He sounded desperate. Apparently, he had heard about my business. He wanted employment, a consulting position. Anything. The man who abandoned me in another state was asking me for a job. I let him speak. For nearly 10 minutes, then I asked one question. Why would I trust you with my company? Silence. Long silence. Finally, he said he had made mistakes. I agreed, then I wished him luck and ended the call. That was it. No dramatic revenge speech. No screaming. No insults. Just consequences. Sometimes that's more powerful. The truth is, the best revenge wasn't watching their lives fall apart. The best revenge was building a life that no longer depended on their approval. For decades, I believed happiness would come when my parents finally loved me equally, when Ryan finally appreciated me, when everyone finally recognized my worth. I was wrong. Happiness arrived when I stopped asking broken people to tell me who I was. Today, I'm 43. My business employs 12 people. I mentor young professionals. I have friends who feel like family. I have peace, real peace. My parents and I maintain limited contact, civil but distant. Jason is working to rebuild his life. I genuinely hope he succeeds. Ryan remains a stranger, and that's exactly where he belongs. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's this. The people who betray you often believe you'll always be there waiting. Waiting to forgive, waiting to rescue them, waiting to accept less than you deserve. But sometimes the most important thing you can do is walk away. Not because you're bitter. Not because you're seeking revenge, because you're finally choosing yourself. And when you choose yourself, after years of being everyone else's backup plan, something incredible happens. You stop surviving, and you start living. That's the kind of karma nobody sees coming.